What is up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to The Right Mindset. Today, I'm going to go over the next step in writing your script, and this particular lesson will be about developing your characters. And I am going to go over both how to write believable characters and how to develop your characters. A nice 2-for-1 today, so let's get to it. Boom. Thanks so much for coming to check out this video. As you can tell on the Make a Right MakeARightLeftHere.com. That's my personal entertainment website. The Right Mindset channel, which you are on now. I have multiple playlists from, the steps to writing a script, the steps to writing a novel, outlining stuff, questions and answers on the industry, some motivational videos, and of course, the Right Mindset podcast. I'm just happy that I'm able to get these playlists filled up. I mean, I think these are officially the third videos in each playlist, and I got I have 10 playlists, so that's 30 videos a minimum. So feel free to enjoy them, check them out. If there are topics I'm not hitting yet that you are more interested in, let me know in the comments below. And with that, if you do like the videos and you are looking for specific videos that you're asking for and you want to see them, subscribe to the channel, click that bell icon so you don't miss out. So let's get to it. Today's lesson is about developing your characters. Now, first and foremost, believable characters are important. But a good motivation creates an emotional connection with your audience. Yes, motivation is about what does this character want. And yes, it's great to think about that. But this is how I use this particular idea before asking myself what they want. I figure out what my plot is and how the characters react to the narrative. Why? This leads me to who they are internally. Yes, you can sit there and figure out what your characters wants before you even write or create them. You can sit there and go, I want a character, their wants are they just want peace. They just want to be left alone. They want peace. They want to just, enjoy their marriage with their wife. But the wife gets cancer, dies, because that's every movie just kills the woman off. So the guy gets propelled into action, even though John Wick is an amazing movie because it's just fun, because it's just fun to watch. It's a traditional trope where it's just like, let's just get the woman out of the way, but her death inspires. But it's not the inciting incident, by the way. Her death is not the inciting incident. Is clearly the death of his dog being murdered. Do not kill dogs, and so I can't say that because I kill animals in my stories. So listen. So yes. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with setting up your lists. I personally, I'll do a little of both. I might say to myself, what would be an interesting experience? And then I kind of mold my character around that and adjust as I need to before I even get to the script. This allows me and would allow yourself to basically have a starting point, and then you kind of can mold it a little bit. And then I personally like to allow the story to help continue to adjust what it is I came up with. I'm not afraid to allow the story to push back on me a little bit. Obviously, I ultimately have the final decision, but sometimes I might be writing something and I say, oh, wait, this is kind of pushing me into this direction with this character. Maybe let me at least see where that's going, instead of me going, no, my character, this is the character who no, so and during this process, you might realize they have no true central conflict. I call this basically where you get to what I call challenge the information. So challenging the information is important. I'm actually going to go over that in another video in greater detail because it's something that really helps me as a writer. And also, like when I'm watching something, I'd be like, "This is a terrible story." Why? Because nothing's being challenged. Everything's being resolved. There's no pushback. And that's when I get into and I'm sure you've heard me on this channel, especially if you've been following me. I always say lots of things are happening, but nothing is happening. So basically, things have to happen. So we're just going to make them happen, and Deus Ex Machina, right? Challenging the information gives you a moment to say, "Wait, why don't we work on this a little bit and see if we can develop something here, right?" But if your uh, if you present a character's motivations, okay, information about the story or something that happens overall, you still need to challenge that information, and that's what's so good about just the concept of challenging information and getting to those motivations of what a character is. Because, you know, when a character has a moment, will they do A or will they do B? You want to say to yourself, is this who they are? Or am I just making them do something that needs to be done? So, the challenging information is really giving them a chance to say, if they make a choice, what would the consequences be? And by the way, consequences could be good or bad. And a good consequence is not a resolve per se. A good consequence is the story still changes, the narrative still changes, and they're still placed into a different position. For example, let's say a good consequence is, you know, they heal or they get superpowers. Okay, the story's still going to change. They didn't technically resolve the issue. They now have a whole slew of new issues. I have to learn these powers. Or what are the limitations of these powers? Do I have to check myself and my morality? And will this get to my head? Et cetera, et cetera. So, what are what and by challenging information and understanding that they can make choices and this consequence is good or bad, you'll discover their internal or external obstacles to that information goal by taking some time to explore. And what are you exploring? You're exploring what would, could, or should happen if A happens. So I like to follow the path all the way from A to B to C. What does that really mean? You might realize you like the way those consequences move or even the character reacting to those moments. If you don't, then change it up. But the point is to experiment to figure out what works best for the story and what helps your characters come alive naturally. This will ultimately lead to that character's naturally organized change over the course of your story. Basically, are their morals being challenged? Are they being pushed back on? Do they have to adjust their morals, right? So, who they are at the beginning of your story should change because they are making choices against the things challenging them who they are, challenging them their motivations, their morals, their ideals, their missions, their purpose. Who they are is being challenged by what is happening around them, to them, or with the people they care about. Let their choices have emotional weight to them, and the easier the choices, the less of a change that character would have. When you get this far with your character, before ever really writing a fully fledged script, give yourself some backstory material on that character. Okay. All right. So let's take a beat real quick. I want to go back to let their choices have emotional weight to them, and the easier a choice, the less of change that character would have. So this leads us to having to go back and create a backstory. Maybe that story doesn't necessarily come alive in your script, and that's fine, in your movie or your television show or your play. But you still kind of want to know where they stand before the story began. Like, who are they, and what is their go-to choice? Like for me, my go-to choice is always going to be Wild Cherry Pepsi. I'm not sponsored yet, but However, if someone brings me a Mr. Pibb, that's not really going to change me. I'm not going to have a massive response to that. Emotionally, I'm not going to care. It's still a drink. If I don't like the drink at all, I just won't drink it. Like, nothing is changing, really, right? But if I know who I am from my morals, and I'm in a situation, I see somebody being bullied, I might step up and say something. If I see an injustice that I I have the means to intervene, I may or may not do that depending on the situation or whatever the case may be. If I see a chance to help somebody, if it's not uncommon for me to be near someone who is light on change and they're like, oh, I don't even have my wallet. It's probably something that happened more or less when I was younger, where, because now everyone has cards. But, if somebody was at the deli and they were like, oh, I only have enough for this. And I'd be like, oh, what do you want, a sandwich too or something? They're like, yeah, I wanted a sandwich, but I only have enough for the 2 coffees for me. I go, just get the sandwiches. I'll take care of you. But those are moral choices, right? So we all have certain choices in us, and if they start getting challenged, that really develops us as characters. So it's good to kind of look at a backstory, even if it's a paragraph worth of information, of just kind of like a loose, broad understanding of where they came from before the story happened. And by doing that, you can now use this time to look at what is going on beat wise in your story and say to yourself, well, where did this person come from before the story took place? And character backstory is a nice filler to bring color to the verbal and physical character itself. So basically, who they are is going to dictate how they talk, why they talk, how they act, and why they act, and if they act at all. Now, you're opening the book for the audience as they have a past too. By having that backstory, if all else is done and you're wondering why the character is still missing something, then try this, right? Before I go into this real quick, right? The character backstory helps fill in the gaps of who the character is, because you can say, all right, I'm making choices based on who they are, but I also want to let the character grow. Are who they are being challenged, and do they accept the change? Do they fight the change? Whatever the case may be, right? And if this is done in a very good way, your audience is at least going, "Oh, I'm seeing it happen. This is believable," But if a character is just making choices to get the story to go through, they're not believable characters. And that's the thing. Like, the challenge of who they are is the believable part. When you see a friend being challenged and then doing the right thing, or the right thing by what they have consistently done, you become closer to that person. You trust that person more. But if you see someone basically being challenged and then they go against the things you recognize them as a person that made you really close to them, then you start questioning them as a person. You start saying, oh, well, I think they just lied to me. And that, like, one little lie is just like, all right. And then another lie, like, this is not who I thought they were, So readers also are looking for that in characters. Not that they're specifically looking for that, but when it hits them, they do notice it. And, obviously, if you get to the end and the character is like, what else? There's something missing. What else do I do? You could always go the superficial route and add some characteristics, sort of like, what does the character look like, dress like, move like, and put that character from the mind of yourself off the page and into a visual idea and start drawing them. So if you draw out a character, that might help you too. I'm an artist. That's why I started as an illustrator in the comic world when I was 17, 18. I wanted to be an illustrator my whole life, and then fell into music, and music landed me in writing and comedy and acting and stuff. But weird life. But I used to love drawing, and I used to draw my characters all the time, and I would tell stories while I was drawing them to myself, and I'd be like, who are, even though I was, in my teens, whatever. So sometimes, if you have artist friends, you ask them to draw something. I'm not really an artist as much as I used to be, and clearly I'll see work and I'll be like, man, I wish I kept drawing, or, clearly I'm not an artist anymore. But if you have friends who are artists, be like, hey, if I tell you a little bit about this character, can you show me what you think they look like? Give me an interpretation. And it helps you to look at a character physically and be like, I got it. All right. So if you can do those things, challenge your character's morals, missions, purpose, ideals, put them in situations where they have to either make the right choice based on what they would do, or they change their choices, or they break their moral choice for the right reasons. That's another thing, right? So if you don't believe in stealing, but you're starving, but more importantly, other people are starving, you're challenging the character. Will they break their moral of never to steal? There's something they stood firm on. They go, you know what? Not stealing is not as important as I want to make sure that these people are eating. and that's another leap into who they are believably. And obviously things need to be consistent. They can't be making choices that just don't make any sense. All right, so let's get to develop your characters. Let's talk about it. What kind of characters do you want to see move through your story? Which ones would add conflict or find solutions through your story? Interesting. Do you have an idea of what a blank standard character would look like for your story? Basically, like, are they the big hero, like the Rock, or the quiet thinker character? Whoever you basically choose as a blank standard, give some thought to their psychology, which, by the way, might come out naturally on the page or through outlining. And by the way, like when you're developing a character, you could start out. You could just be like, "Oh, I want a big hero. I want or I want a quiet thinker, or I want the funny character." I personally don't like doing this, uh, where I'm like, they'll be the funny character. Like, all my characters have the potential to be funny, but some characters are naturally funny. Other characters stumble through funny, and more so, other characters think they're funny. And people are like, "What?" And they're like, "Oh, it's a joke." And they're like, like, "Are you sure it's a joke?" Because everyone has a sense of humor, but the level of sense of humor. But you don't want to. I personally don't like to pigeonhole characters. I don't want this to be the strong character. Like in the story I'm working on right now for my fantasy novel, I have a character. Uh, it's a side character, but I love this character. Vargas, and he on the outside appears as the strong, massive, physical brute. He's the brute. If you see him, you're like, he's the brute, right? He's massively tall. He's 6'5" plus, whatever. His size is huge. He wears massive armor. He carries a double-sided axe, and you're just like, this guy is a brute. He looks like time has worn him out. But you discover more about that character as the story develops, where who he is. He's sensitive. He's wise. Violence is actually his third or fourth choice. But he's also willing to just kill, just to be like, what, you made this choice. I didn't want to do this, but I'm also not gonna. I'm just gonna end it because I just want to get back to my status quo of just being left alone. And it's somebody who sits and relaxes, somebody who enjoys the moment, somebody who takes their time. They don't have to rush to the next moment. So yes, on the outside I was like, I want this character to just be massive, but I want the character to be something deeper, something more interesting. So you could start off with the, I want a big hero, but then you know break down things, add a couple of other things that are more important. For example, don't allow the big character to have the big character stereotypes. I mean, you could start there, but then, let's see what else we could do with this, right? But anyway, uh the other thing is, once you start working out your character, even if you start with the blank standard and you start kind of figuring out their psychology, and this, again, while you're working on your outline, this might come out naturally. This is going to be the why, how, when, where, and what they do element of the character. Why they do what they do, how they do what they do, where and when they do what they do, and what they do when they do it. The psychology of your character is important. Their choices are important. Okay, so why they do something, not that you have to detail this out in pages and pages, but it's good to have like a sentence next to a character's name on your character sheets, your character. So you just have the same line for everybody, but it's in their voice, and maybe an action after that, and you go, all right, this is who that character, this is their choices. You could even, instead of writing their morals are they don't believe in stealing, it's just something that click you with who they are as a character. But when you get to moments to figure out that believability while developing a character, is ask those why they do what they do. And you might not have to write all that down. It's just when you're working on your outline or you're working on writing your book, your piece, okay? um it gives you a chance to ultimately say, for, in your script, you get to moments and you just have to say, well, why they do that? Why did they do that? Or how they do what they do? Or, you can ask those questions in those moments. It's all right to always ask those questions and kind of like work through it. Okay. What always makes for a great journey to develop a character for you is always working on your character. That's right. It's wordplay. So you're developing a character, but work on their character, who they are. Someone's character is important. So listen to the natural changes that come from working out the story and plot. You are allowed to change what you create, also very important. Give time, and the first script and its characters shouldn't, by rule of process, uh, not appear the same as they did in your zero draft or even your first draft. What that means is you're going to write something, and as you work it, it's going to change. You have to be willing to listen to those changes. Again, you can allow yourself to say, "Hey, the story's pushing back on me. Let me hear." But ultimately, I get to have the final say in what I want in my story. The thing is, your first script should not look like your third script. It shouldn't even look like your second script. But if you write 6 or 7 drafts of the same script, that first draft shouldn't even look like the fifth draft. It should have beats and elements, but the characters should have come alive by now. The scenes should be worked out to a point where they're right to the point, and there's no fluff. And that's the thing in screen. Every line you write. That's why they say, keep the description light, keep the action light, keep the action right to the point. What are we seeing on screen? If we're not seeing, if it doesn't have to be seen on screen, do we really need the action? You don't really need to give stage direction. Let the characters and the actors figure it out, unless the stage direction is absolutely without a doubt part of the narrative, right? Because every line in a script is money, because every page is money. So if a page is about a minute and it takes on average to do a high budget film, you do 2 to 3 pages a day on filming, or a low budget where it's maybe 5 to 6 pages if you're lucky, every day is money. So when you're writing a script, the object of your goal is to get it to where you get everything you want out on the page, and then you slim it down and you finally tune it so it's a good, strong, creative story. Okay. Like Transformers 2. Anyway, oh, by the way, plot lines will be cleaned up as you rewrite. Please make that true. Characters will come and go, sometimes finally vanish. That is also true. You'll find out that maybe I don't need this extra character. I could just have this character. And you hear that often if you do your research, where in scripts that are, especially books, translated into movies or television shows, they'll take 2 characters and just make 1 character for the screen, because it costs money. It costs money to have an actor. It costs money to dress that person. It costs money to film that scene. It costs money to do that dialogue. Whereas you could take 2 characters and just make them 1. It's not unheard of, especially if you're doing an original story. Think, do you need 20 characters in that one scene? You gotta think about that. Okay. It's so funny when it gets all blurry like that. All right, so characters will come and go. Dialogue will be shortened and cleaned up, maybe even removed completely. Oh my God, so true. Marlon Brando was notorious for looking at a script and seeing the dialogue and being like, "Let me try something," and then he just physically represents everything the dialogue was trying to say, and they cut out a whole page and move it down to a moment. And I'm not saying to do that, but it's not about what you wrote. It's not about your biased opinion of your ego to how awesome, amazing, and unique your script is. It's about what serves the story, what makes this narrative clean and concise and true. And it's not, imagine your script had like, "Hey, how's it going? Pretty good. How are you doing? All right. Hey, what are you doing later today? I don't know. I really, I think I'm going to just sit around and do nothing." "Oh, are you? Because I have a couple things I was going to do." "Really? What are you going to do?" And it takes like 2 pages just to get to the point of the conversation. Whereas you could just have them walk in and go, "Yo, we got to go to blank, blank, blank. I need the thing for blank, 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 and blah, blah, blah. All right, man, let's go." Or, I was going to sit around and do nothing all day, but the hell with it. let's get to going where we got to go. Now, obviously, I could sit there and say, all right, let's clean that scene up and let's challenge that scene and let's have a little pushback. And then I might say, well, why do I need the pushback? Let me just resolve that scene. And then I might say, well, why do I need that scene? Why can't they just be at the place where they need to be to get the thing? And then I'll add conflict and challenge there. So now, like, why do they have to meet up at the guy's house or person's house and then go to the store? You see, that's the brilliance of screenwriting, is your job is to just skin it down. And by the way, all this is okay. Do not marry your ideas. That's a screenwriter's death right there. Especially if you're in a writer's room, or you get like notes, especially if you get notes from a head writer or you get notes from like a studio. Your job isn't to say, no, I wrote it this way. It's my way or the highway. No, this is my idea. It's so good. If I change it, then I got to change the whole thing. Well, change the whole thing then. But one of the best advices I've gotten from the industry, within the industry, from fellow writers, is if a studio exec or anyone of note gives you a note, it's okay to say, you know what? I'll look into that. Let me see what I could do. We'll brainstorm it. They just want to feel heard. Do you have to do the change? Not really. But what if you do think about it? What if you can think about it, take their note, and put it in your voice and allow the story to be true to what you originally wanted, but you're adding that proof? My point is, you'll go further in your career as a screenwriter, if you're willing to listen. But you do want to allow your ideas to raise characters that are both a part of who you are and what they are meant to be. They are your children, right? You're creating them. You're giving birth to them. So we give them what we know, we let them become themselves, and we guide them on their way as best we can. So that's why you have to look at them like they're your children. We bestow upon the characters what we know, right? We let them become themselves through their choices and what's presented, and we guide them on their way as best we can when they get to difficult moments. And that's a really great way to look at your character development. You can only bestow upon your children what you know. As they make choices, they become who they are. And then, of course, when they struggle, you step forward and say, hey, this is my advice, or this is what I could do to help you. Okay. And when in doubt, throw a wrench into your characters' lives to see how and what they will do. That's right. Even if that life is before or after the script takes place, you might realize by doing this, they would add so much more dynamic with different character types, pairings, locations, and situations. So those 2 points of views are those 2 points to stand on is even before the script starts or where the script is going, right? So how do you throw the character's life out of whack? You throw a wrench into it, right? So you say, hey, they're doing good. They've been doing too many resolves, no challenges. Let's throw a wrench into their life. And then the other thing is, like, who are the characters before the story starts and who are the characters after the story starts? In fact, seeing where they're going to end up once the script ends, where are they going to be in 6 months after the script ends, or a year, or 5 years? And you can put that into the script. The concept of who they are and the choices that lead them to that point could be in the script, helping develop that character. And the same thing with the past. Where are they coming from? And the dynamic aspect of what you can realize with this is, if you have a character, what would be great as a character type that is polar opposite? Think of different interesting pairings. Think of unique locations. Think of situations that aren't necessarily always out there. A really good example of this would be your traditional buddy cop film where 2 cops are put together for the first time and they're literally polar opposites. You got Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, 2 completely different kind of cops with different minds, and you put them together and you get some funny moments, right? So anyway, and finally, but not least, you need to delve into your character's personality for both your main characters and the minor characters. Okay. We as writers can fall in love with the idea of our main characters. And remember, every character, even those with 1 or no lines at all, has value within a story. If they don't, Either take them out or work on them. Because some of my favorite characters came from, I really would like to have another female character, or this story could totally use 6 characters instead of 5. And then it turns into something. And that's true. Like, I've read scripts where I'm just like, this main character is definitely flushed out, but their side, the secondary characters, or even like, they run into the clerk. The clerk is personalityless. Like, why have the clerk there? Why do they need to even say anything if they have no personality? Just have, it gives the money to the clerk. If the character doesn't have personality or purpose or value, take them out or work on them. There's no harm in working on them, but every person that has interaction needs to have purpose. They don't have to have a full six book encyclopedia series dedicated to who they are, especially if they only have one line. But give value to all your characters so it gives value to the story. And if they don't have value, get rid of them. The other thing is, like I said, there are so many sub characters that turned into some of my favorite characters. Like Vargas was just I need another character, and then I work on the character and I develop its backstory and I develop the story, the plot points for that character. And the same thing, I have like, I don't really like writing stories where it's just like guys. I like to kind of mix men and women. I like to mix different sexualities, different personalities, different. I just want to kind of like have a smorgasbord, a cornucopia of interesting relationships working together. And the idea is sometimes I will literally just say, I would really like to have another female in this story, and then I just put a female in the story. But if I just put a female in the story, that character be pointless. But what I do is I put a character in the story, and then I start working on their backstory, and I start working on who they are, even though they might not be the main character. And then from there, I start going, oh, how would they react to these moments, and how do they add to these moments? And I find myself really creating these dynamic characters where I say, man, I would like to have a story for this character and see their life. And that's how I expand my worlds and my novels. Is ultimately I have my novel, but then I have the world that's outside that novel. And people live for 40, 50, 60 years, and if they live, even if they die in a story, who were they before that moment? Let's see that story. So it's okay to say something as general as, I need another female character, or I would like 6 characters instead of 5 characters, and then see where it goes. And remember, be kind to the people you give life to. So if you're going to give life to these characters and bring them to your stories, don't just throw them in there for just to have them in there. Be kind to them. They're literally going to be your children. They're going to be these characters that tell your story. All right. Whew. All right. This video is almost over. I'm on final thoughts. So this can be, by the way, this could be such a fun process. But let yourself have the freedom to enjoy messing around with it. Go where it goes, but also reel it in from time to time, because that's what makes a great writer. They allow for brainstorming to happen while also knowing how to clean it up and pull it in. A story is nothing without a plot, but that plot can't be told without characters, even if those characters are toys, technically. My big rule is this character here to say things, do things, or add value? Weight to things. Okay? And hopefully they are all all your characters are there to do all 3. You'll hear me say it often that I hate when a lot of things are happening but nothing is happening. Don't let characters just be another thing that needs to happen, but let what they do be something of purpose. Hope that helps. The next video in this series, the whole steps to writing a script. The next video in the series will be, oh, nice. We're finally to the plot and outline. This is going to be exciting. But Thomas, you do a lot of outline videos. Yes, I do. Even as a pantser, though, you still need to know the big story beats and where the story is going. And Kill Bill, he needed to know. Bill died. So we'll go over how to refine an outline and plot to make a script feel full and complete. And the reason I say that is because I already have tons of videos and a whole playlist dedicated to outlines, which you can go watch. So I'm going to use this opportunity to show you what the next step is, especially in screenwriting when you're dealing with a script, how to refine your outline and how to refine the plot for that script. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Question: What film or television show have you seen where the majority of the characters are amazing, but there's one or two that just seem to be taking up space? Let me know, and let me and the community know in the comments below. And also, want to learn more about improving your craft inside of the industry and I don't even know what that means. Look, do you want to know more about your craft? Do you like the videos you're watching? Do you want to learn a little bit about the industry? I throw a little tidbits in there, but I also have playlists on the industry. But more importantly, we do interviews with real writers, authors, screenwriters, people in the industry, and we discover their lives and their journeys, and it's a fun little podcast that I also have the videos on this channel. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out. All right, that's it. I'll see you next time. Bye.